Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Srini here, and this is my channel. You can just go ahead and subscribe to it and hit the bell to get notifications. So you'll be getting a lot of free videos in Java, Selenium, Python, and robotics process automation and API automation as well. So let's get on to today's topic. Today's topic is on the continuation of the Selenium interview questions, which you can expect for a 2 to 3 years experienced professional. So this is part 4 in the series. You can look at my part 1 to 3 in this particular playlist as well. I'll give a link for the same in this particular video. So let's get on to today's topic. So we'll continue from where we had stopped last time. So we had seen the first 10 questions in the last tutorial session, right? So in this particular session, we'll continue the remaining part. So let's get on to the 11th question. So you'll be asked by the interviewer that you need to get a count of all the drop-down menus on a page. How many total drop-down menus are there on a page? So how are you going to find out the XPath for it? So this is a little bit confusing or tricky to understand the question actually. The answer is quite simple. You just have to understand drop-down menus means they are trying to find out how many drop-down. They might not even use this drop-down. They might just say menus on a page. So you have to implicitly understand that it's a drop-down. All right. So if it's a drop-down, then what normally we select a drop-down? How do we associate a drop-down as an element on a website? We go for the select tag, right? We go for the select tag. So the way we have to prepare the XPath is, it could be any tag, that's fine, right? So just you have to use this way. So let me show it in the coding perspective. Right, so what you're going to do is, we already have the driver WebDriver variable here, right? I'll just use it somewhere here. So the way how we prepare the XPath is that driver dot find. So it will be number of elements, right? It could be drop down menus on a page. It need not be only one. So I'm going to use find elements. And the way to do is by dot tag name. And I know the tag name here is going to be select, right? So this is how you're going to find out the different elements which are matching to a drop down menu that is represented by the tag called select tag. It is going to return you a list of web elements. So you're going to store it in a list of web elements and you say it as drop down menus, and that's it. So then you will be using a normal iterator and then you are going to iterate through it and do whatever action you want. Maybe you want to get the values, or maybe you just want to get the count. So the count is very simple. If you want to get the count of how many drop down menus are there, you just have to use its inbuilt methods. If you see size, right, it's going to give you the number of drop downs present on the web page. So this is how you're going to answer this interview question number 11. So this is Java. So 11th interview question. This is how you're going to answer it. Right. Let's go into the next topic. You want to perform some operation on an element. However, WebDriver isn't able to interact with it. What will you do? So again, this is going to have a different perspective of how are you going to answer this question. It depends on the scenario also, in which particular scenario you're getting this kind of a issue. So there are possible ways to go about it, right? So the first way is that you can use actions class. You can use actions class and move to the element on which you want to perform operations, on which we need to perform operations. And it could be any operations like clicking on it or sending something, etc., etc. So let's consider if it's a click operation, right? So first of all, you have to move to the element and then you have to do the click action. So that is the first way. Second way is to use JavaScript executor. So as we have discussed earlier in earlier session, that we can use JavaScript executor when a normal different ways of finding or locating the element doesn't work, like ID, class, name, XPath, etc. Or in this scenario as well, if we are not able to directly interact with the element through the normal ways, right, then we have to use JavaScript executor. So we have already seen JavaScript executor in the last lecture. So let's look at how actions class is going to be used here. So I'm going to answer this 12th question, first part, first way. Right. So how you have to do is that you have to create an object of actions class, right? I'm just going to create actions class object. It's going to ask you to import it. So import it, and it is going to expect a driver variable here. So we'll add the argument matching to this driver what you've created. Now this is the actions class. Now what you have to do, you have to build a set of actions, right? And then you have to execute it. So you have to basically create the set of actions here, and once your actions are completed, then you basically have to execute it, right? So how we go about that is that you basically have to use this actions dot, right? Now what you have to do, you have to move to a specific element if you're not able to locate it or not able to do through a normal way. So you're going to use this method move to element where it is expecting an element of web element types, right? So we are going to create what element we want it to move it to. So we are going to define it here, and this should be the normal XPath, how we basically locate, right? So you have to use that XPath here. This is the first way, that is to do it through actions class. First move to the element, then perform action on it. Let's say there was some XPath. I'm just trying to take example here, something like that, right? I'm just taking an XPath value as an example, and this is the web element, right? And now you're going to move it to this particular element. So you're going to put that value here. Once you have moved to that element, what you have to do the action on it, right? So there are a lot of actions which you can see here. You can double click on an element, you can drag and drop, you can click on an element. So there are a lot of options which you can see here, right? So we have decided to go for move to element and then do some additional action. So let's say that action was a click action, right? If it's a click action, then finally you have to build it. That's it. So we have built a set of actions and then we are building it. So if you just do a mouse over, it is going to return you a set of actions, right? So let's do one thing. We can create a action class object, right? And now what you're going to do, we've created a set of actions here, and we have to execute this action now. So we're going to say action dot perform. So as you say action dot perform means whatever steps you have built here, those are going to be executed. That is what this actions class does here. And then you can go ahead with your normal base. So second way we have seen in the previous tutorial. So you can go over that. The next question is, what are different ways of asserting if you want to do some assertion with your expected result and your actual result? How are you going to do the assertion, right? So they would be expecting an answer like what are the different ways of doing assertion, and with an example, of course, right? So let's look at that 13th question, right? So there are two ways of doing the assertions in Selenium. There are two ways. One is called soft assert and other one is called hard assert. We have to understand the difference in the meaning of both. Soft assert means that you are going to verify whether expected and actual are same or not. But so verify if actual and expected are same or not. However, don't stop execution if a particular step fails in a test case. Right? So we might have a test case which has got a lot of steps, right? So we don't want our execution to be stopped abruptly in between because one of the assertion got failed. If that assertion, of course, was not that critical, if it was a very low severity exception, let's say cosmetic error like spelling mistake was there, then we would not want our test case to be stopped in between. Of course, it's an issue. We have to log a bug, cosmetic bug. We can give it as a report later on, but we would want a test case to continue with other steps. But hard assert is actual execution would be stopped if expected and actual aren't matching. So that is the meaning of actual assertion. I mean hard assert, right? And why and which scenarios you would need hard assert? Hard assert will be, of course, required in those kind of scenarios where, let's say, we are having a very complicated project which has got different pages and we have got a module to module connection, and we are executing, let's say, an end-to-end scenario from creation of some data to usage of the data and then finally achieving the result. Maybe an e-commerce website example, like searching the items, adding the items to the cart, and then finally checking out and purchasing the items, right? If in between, let's say, connecting from one page to another, or in between some module to another module, we somehow there is some bug in the application, right? And it has led to some other page which is not the right one. And why would we want to continue our steps in those test cases if those redirected pages itself are not right? or not correct, right? So we would want our execution to basically be stopped and raise a high severity defect there and there itself. There is no point in continuing the execution further, right? So this is where we are going to use hard assert as compared to soft assert. So let's see both the ways how to define the syntax. So for soft assert, you have to use a soft assert as a class, right? Equal to new soft assert, like how you basically create an object, similar syntax you have to use here, right? And after that, you have to say soft assert dot. So here you can use now all the different assert methods what we have already seen in our previous Selenium lectures. You can use assert equals to compare maybe, let's say the string text. Let's say you're trying to validate some text, right? Actual might be Selenium and expected might be some other thing. It could also be Selenium. So in this scenario, it's going to give us pass. If you're going to use some character which is not exactly matching, then it's going to give us fail. But it is not going to stop your execution here. It will still continue. So these steps you're going to keep it as a part of some test case method. Just for the sake of explanation, I'm putting in this main method right now, but it will be a part of some test case method. It could be maybe at the part as a part of @test also. This could be the case, right? It could be part of @test. You could have a method like this. Just to show you an example, it will be something like this. There might be a series of steps in the test case, and this step intermediately in between might be failing, but you would want to continue with your other steps which are there, right? So this is what I wanted to show, that soft assert will allow your execution to proceed further. It will not abruptly stop, right? Now let's look at the other way. Other way is called as the hard assert, right? That is the hard assert, and this was soft assert. Right. So hard assert, what happens in case of hard assert? You simply have to use assert class. So we are going to use test ng in those scenarios. You're going to use this assert. So assert dot, if you use, you're going to get the similar methods what you have seen in soft assert as well. But here it's going to make a complete hard stop if your assertion fails. Again, you're going to use similar validations and compare with your actual and expected. Right. So this is how you're going to use assertions, soft and hard assert in your Selenium. So these are the two types of assert we have seen now. 14th question is explain different annotations in test ng. What is the difference between before method and before test annotation? This is a very important question to be asked in the interview. So different annotations in test ng makes it such a powerful tool, right? So basically with test ng you can create different annotations. So I'll be explaining one with some simple class. I'll create one other class here and I'll explain you the test ng concept. Right, so we're going to not use any main method now. So we're going to keep it unchecked. We are going to see without main method how are that we are going to execute our test cases, right? So this is a default constructor. Let's leave it for the time being. So the annotations in test ng, one of the biggest and the most important one to remember is @test annotation. This represents a test case. So let's say we have a test case like let's say test login. This is a test case, right? So we are going to use always make it as a practice to include test as a part of your method name. That will give an indication that of all the other methods in your class, which is your test ng test method, right? So you're going to import these annotations. So there are two annotations here. Do not be confused. You have to use this all test ng annotations because we aren't using JUnit for our example here. We're using test ng. So we'll import test ng @test annotation, and you can see here that let me remove this library for now. So there is a library test ng which we have to import. So let me remove it now, right? And we have to basically use it whenever we are using test ng. We have to just go to our project, go to build path, go to configure build path, or you can directly go to libraries also, and you can see there is a test ng library. Just do next and finish it. So this test ng libraries will be imported, which have got the test ng classes, right? Okay. So now what you're going to do here, this is you're going to keep all your test case steps, everything in this particular method. So there is no main method here. You're just going to execute this particular program like this, run as, and it will give you option of test ng test, right? So I'll be creating a detailed video on test ng for sure in my next tutorial session. But I'll just explain in this particular tutorial session for this question what are the different annotations. So you have before method. You're going to say this method as void setup. You have something called after method is executed. So I'll just explain you few methods here, few annotations here, and you're going to look in detail in the next session for testing, right? And then finally, yeah, I think that's all we need to use for now. Yeah, and I had mentioned one of the other part, right? Before test. Yeah, so let me create one annotation more for before test. Explain the difference between the two. Right. So you have to just do mouse over on these, and you have to import this from the awk test ng annotations: before method, after method, and before test. And you have to rename this. So you're going to say as before application. Right. So these are the different annotations. Some of the few different annotations and important ones which we have just trying to cover in this particular question for this in this session, right? So at the rate test here, this is going to be a test case, right? And now you can give some attributes, like there is some attribute called priority. That is what priority you would want to give to this particular test case. If I say 0th priority, means this test case will get the highest priority. Fine. So let's say there is one more method now, and let's say test login. Let's say test sign, maybe test home page. Let's create another method, test home page, right? And if I say priority 1, means this will get a lower priority compared to this test case. So this will execute first, this will be executed second, right? So we are going to see in depth later on. This is just for some basic thing to understand. Before method means this is actually not a test case. It's actually called as a method. It's a test method. This is actually method of test ng. It is not a test case. So that is the thing which we have to keep in mind. So when we say before method means before this @test annotation gets executed. It could be this, and for this also. Before each of the @test annotation get executed, this particular thing is going to be executed first before method, right? So what things we would want to keep here? We would want to keep the launching of the browser and everything, like instantiate the WebDriver variable, etc., etc. Those all steps, right? And then basically using driver.get application and all that. So whatever basic steps we have seen in our previous tutorial sessions, right? Those we are going to keep it here. And setting up the implicit wait and the explicit wait, etc., etc. So you're going to have all those different things, steps mentioned here. The before method. What are we going to do after method? We would want to just complete that particular test case, right? This test method actually. Let's not use test case here. Let's say test method. We are going to call this as test method. So that will basically solve our confusion. Otherwise, it will be very confusing if you want to differentiate between test case and a test method, right? This is test method, right? So this is after test method. We are going to execute this part. So what we're going to simply say here, driver.quit. So we're going to say here driver.quit. That's it. Now it's not able to get this driver variable, of course, because I've made it as a local variable here. So I'm going to make it as a global variable so that it is able to recognize it. Yeah. And I will have to just make this thing to. There you go. So we will have, of course, some steps in between here. I'm not going to mention that because it's already covered before. So you have to mention the same steps as you've done earlier. And you're going to say driver.quit here after the method is executed. Now, what is before test? This is indicating before test case. Now, what is a test case and a test method? This is a favorite question of the interviewer because they know candidates are not that sure enough to answer this question. So I'll explain you what is the example and the answer for this question. So testng demo is inside a Selenium sample. Fine. So let's go to testng.xml and I'll explain you this concept now. If you see this entire XML structure, it starts from this XML tag. There is a suit level tag. There is a test tag. And then in between this test tag, as of now, there is nothing inside it. And we are closing the test tag here and then the suit tag, right? So this is the hierarchy representation of a testng.xml. It starts from suit. It has test, and in between that, you have actually optional classes tag. And if you want to mention any class, right, you're going to say class name, whatever, and you're going to complete it here. So if our package has to be executed, if a test ng demo has to be executed, we have to go to that particular class. So it's going to be pkg, because we are having that class within pkg package dot test ng demo. That's it. It's just the name of the class we need. We don't need to give the entire file name here, right? So now before test means this test. This is a test case, right? Test one. This is going to be called as a test case. So whenever we say test case before test method, right? That means before that particular test case get executed, this particular test case get executed, you want to run this particular method before app. It could be anything. It could be like navigating from one page to another and then continuing from that page, doing some setting here, and then like that we can continue like that, right? Before method means before you start any test case method within a test case. If before you start any test method, this is called test method, you would want to do some action, maybe initialize something, maybe load the page or go back to the home page. It could be anything. You might be on some other page, you would want to come to the home page and start doing your action. So those kind of steps you might keep in a before method, right? So maybe the initialization or the launching part, we might be doing it some, maybe in before test, you might be doing some initialization part, maybe implicit wait, etc. Right? Let's say manage timeouts dot implicit wait. You want to keep that in your before app. Before any application launch, you want to keep that in your before app. Similarly, for page load timeout, you can do that here. So page load timeout, you're going to keep some other value. So those kind of things you can distribute between your before method and before app. So hope you've got the difference. Before method means before your @test method get executed, that is this @test, you would want to do some action that is placed within the before method, right? And before test means before any test case get executed, that is this test case. This test case has got a class here. So before you even start going to the class level itself, something would be executed. That is the difference between before test and before method. So let's go back to the document. How can you execute only failed test cases in Selenium? Now this is going to be a very important thing. So if we execute any failed, if we execute any test in the test case, right? Let's do one thing. So this is what we are having right now. Okay, and let's just try to run it. So let's try to say here in test, and right now let me just keep it as it is, and I'm just going to say in test login here. It's a simple test case we want to execute, right? And we are not keeping anything as such. Yeah, so before method is having such kind of things. So what we will do is that we are just going to keep it commented for now, because we would want to keep a proper code here. So let's just say a sysout statement before method. So I'm going to show you all a positive scenario first, right? And then I'll go to a actual scenario where what you would have to do. And for executing only failed test cases, I'm just trying to execute this particular test case here to show you how to execute only failed test cases. I'm just trying to simulate that scenario. So this is before app. I can say before test. That will be more meaningful. And this is after method. Yeah. So here we go. We have mentioned some print statements for now to execute the test case. So let's run this program. Okay. So it has ran, but it has got some failures. So let's look at that. So it's giving a null pointer exception at 51st line. That's okay. Let's look at what is the null pointer exception. Let's go to that. Yeah, because we have not initialized the driver, so I forgot to comment out these two statements. Let's me look at if any other statements are used, which is including driver. Right. So what I'll do is just I will include the basic properties so that we can start seeing an actual value. Yeah, so this is going to be more meaningful. So we are going to put all of this into our before method so that we initialize all of that and we would not have this problem at all. We already have WebDriver variable, so I'm going to simply use that, and I'm going to, yeah, I've already used the Selenium Chrome driver here. That's it. So we don't need to use any of these statements. Yeah, and close we are not going to do here. We are going to use quit here in after method. That is after a test case gets executed, right? And before test, let's just put the wait part. Before anything gets started, we are going to have the implicit wait and the page load timer, right? So what is happening now? So you are trying to initialize this particular driver variable. It should not be done in the before method. Before test is going to be executed first, right? So you can't use a driver variable here. So what we can do is we can put this statement driver equal to new Chrome driver. This two statements also as a part of our before test method. So this is before test. So we are going to put these two statements also. So we are going to set the path first of the Chrome driver, then initialize the Chrome driver, and then set the timeouts. And in the before method, we are just launching the application and maximizing it. So that is how I've distributed the different flows of the program. So I'm launching the google.com. That's the only action I'm doing, and then I'm quitting the browser after that particular test case has launched the Chrome browser. So let's run this program and let's see what is happening for the other method. So just saying in test login, and it is saying, okay, let's just rename this part. So these are two test cases which are not doing anything as such for now, but just let's run this program. So it's going to launch the browser and then load the Google application and maximize it. So there you go. So it has executed all the statements what it had to do, but then it has failed in between. So let's look at where it has failed. Session ID is null, and where are we trying to reference it here? So here in this line, in before method, we are trying to get that. Yeah, I'll tell you the reason for the same. Because we have initialized this driver variable in before test only once, and we have already quitted the browser, right? Already quitted the browser. So what will happen now is that it is not in sync because already the browser is closed. It's not able to get the session. So what we can do for simplicity now, we can just put these all statements so that we have a proper flow in before method itself. So that every time before it executes any multiple test cases, it will be able to do it in a one session, right? And before test for now, we're not keeping anything. So let's run this program so that we don't get any failure. But I want to show you one thing here. In case you get any failure as well, and now this question goes about how can you execute only failed test cases in Selenium? That you can do using testng would be your answer. And how can you execute only the failed test cases? So you just have to come to your project and refresh it. You can see you are going to get this output test output folder. Just expand it, and there will be a testng-fail.xml. So you're going to get a separate file called testng-fail.xml. So you have to run this as a testng source. So this is how you're going to execute only failed test cases in Selenium. That is using testng and using testng-fail.xml. But still, let me run this program. Now there will not be any failure. So it has completed the first test case. It's going to the next test case now. Since the session got closed, it's launching another session for the next test case. And that's it. There you go. So the failures are 0. So in this case, it's only the past test cases, right? Only for the failed ones, you're going to get a separate testng-fail.xml to execute only the failed test cases. So that was the 15th question. If I have 5 different suits like regression, sanity, end-to-end, functional pack, modular, how can you execute only sanity and regression of the entire lot? So this is a very tricky question. It's not that it's a difficult one. It's just little tricky to understand. That's it. It's a very simple question what they're trying to say. So I'll go to testng.xml here. And before that, what we will do is we'll use one concept called groups. So there are two test cases here, right? Testng is having two test cases here. So let's give it a name. So there is a attribute called description, which will be appearing in your testng report. So if you see this report, right, this report, it is having test login and test homepage. So if you give a description, it will have a proper name for the test case. So let's say test login test case. This is going to be our first test case. And let's copy it for the other test case as well. This is going to be our test homepage, right? So we have two test cases here. And what we are going to do is we are going to include one attribute called groups equal to enclose within this curly brace what groups it belongs to. I'm going to say it belongs to sanity. Okay. What else they have told about functional, right? Let's say it also is a functional test case. So you have to enclose individual groups within double quotes, right? Sanity and functional is what this test case belongs to, and then they have end-to-end modular. Fine. So we'll give for this test case, let's say sanity end-to-end, and let's give it modular. It belongs to these three groups, right? This is the structure part of our testng demo.java. Now let's come to testng.xml. Now here within the classes, you're going to have different methods, and then each method will be having certain groups here, right? These you can see are at the rate, these are test methods, right? And these test method belongs to some groups of test cases like sanity, functional, end-to-end, modular, etc. So this is testng.xml, right? So here you're having this kind of a structure where you're having suit, you're having test cases, and then within the test cases, you're having which classes to be invoked or used. Now, these groups basically they are a part of your test case, right? If you look at this test case here, it is having classes, and those classes are having a lot of @test, which are test methods, right? So you are going to have this concept of groups used here. You have to say groups like this, right? Now, the question what they have tried to ask here is, if you have 5 different suits, how can you execute only sanity and regression? So you want to run only sanity and only regression. This is a very simple example where there are only 2 test cases, but let's say there are 1,000 test cases, and or there are many test cases like that which are complicated and they are in different groups. So how to execute only sanity and regression? So you would have to include only those 2 groups here. So the way to do that is use include tag. Just say name equal to in double quotes, and guess you can close this tag. That's it. So what is the groups you're going to execute? One is sanity. Say sanity here. And one is going to be your regression. But this has to be a part of one parent tag called runtime. So we are going to run only these 2 groups. That is what we want to say to testing. Just try to give some good indentation to make it look like a parent child. Yeah, so this looks fine now. So you're going to run these groups of test cases only, sanity and regression. So what would happen is that only sanity will be executed. So if you see here, sanity and regression, if I make it as regression here, still both will be executed because one belongs to sanity, one belongs to regression, these 2 test cases. So let's run this program through testng.xml and let's see what is the output. So here you go. It has executed both the test cases, right? In test login and in test homepage. Total tests run are 2 and failure is 0. The reason is because both were included. Now, if I make a change here, that instead of sanity regression, right? If I remove this value, let's remove this value, then it's going to execute only sanity. So let's run this program. That's it. Only one test case got executed. That is the test login, because test login belongs to sanity, right? So that completes this interview question, how we can execute each and every group of test cases like sanity or regression, etc. Right. The next question is what is Maven, why it is used, and explain what is form.xml and overall basically its advantages and what why is it Maven is so preferred over other different models, right? So Maven is actually like a build management tool for Java applications, right? So why do we use Maven? Maven is used because it allows us to build our project as well as at the same time it will help us in getting the dependencies, downloaded. Let's say if we are having a specific jar required for Selenium server standalone, or we require a test ng jar, so we need not download them explicitly from the internet and then add to the build path, right? This Maven will take care of just downloading it automatically when we save or compile our program, and it will download it and it will add it as a dependency to our project. So I'll show you that. I've already created one Maven project. I'll show you what how it looks like. So this is how a Maven project looks like. So a simple thing is that when you want to create a Maven project, you just have to go to new, file new, go to project. So there is no Maven option here. So go to project. You can see that there might be a lot of projects here. Just search Maven. You would get this Maven project. Just select that, click on next. But the important thing to know is here is that you need to have internet connection if you want to create a Maven project. So again, I'll be creating a detailed session on Maven separately on test ng and all that. So no need to worry. Just from my interview perspective, I'm just trying to answer this question. So you're going to create a Maven project like that, create a simple project archetype, click on next, give a group ID and artifact ID. Now, what is a group ID and artifact ID? They might ask you. Group ID is something like which organization or group is giving you that resource or artifact, right? Artifact is nothing but like a resource. So if I say org.testng, so testng becomes like an organization who is giving that resource to you, and that will have some artifact ID, that particular resource ID. So just for the demonstration purpose, I'm taking my company name, let's say as pom dot, as project name, let's say as proj.test. Let's say this is how we are going to have a sample project. Right? Just that's all we require to give the values, group ID and artifact ID. Click on finish. So you can see here one project got created and it is having a M abbreviation on top of it along with J, indicating it's a Maven Java project. And this kind of a folder structure would be created when you create a Maven project with form.xml. Now I'll explain the structure and all those things in detail when we go into our Maven part. Okay. For now, I'll explain you why it is used and explain what is form.xml. We'll focus on the interview question for now. Why it is used? Because it's a powerful build tool. It allows us to download the dependencies and it also allows us to deploy to external applications. Like we can have a continuous integration with GitHub, Git, that is the versioning tools to maintain proper versioning of our code. We can integrate it with the different versions tools like Git and GitHub, right? We can also integrate it with Jenkins. So you might have heard the name Jenkins. It's popularly used in DevOps as well. So Jenkins is like a tool used for deployment and for running your project and for scheduling the builds, etc. So this can also be integrated with Jenkins. So we are going to see all of that in detail in our tutorial sessions. So these are some of the advantages of using the Maven project. Now let's come to the form.xml part. So this is how a form.xml looks like. It will basically have your project tags. It will have a model ID, model version, group ID, artifact ID. These all attributes will be there. Then what you're going to have, important one, is the dependencies tag. So under this dependencies tag, you would be mentioning what all dependency you're going to use in this particular project. Those all things you're going to keep it as a part of dependency. This, when you say within the dependency tag with these attributes, then automatically it will download it from the internet. When you start saving the program for the first time, it is going to download this automatically. So I'll just show you one sample. I'll just copy this dependency and I'll go to form.xml, which I've created right now. Right. So I'm just going to See, that's all. We just have to do this, and if we do Control S, and now you can see by doing Control S with the internet connection on, it has already downloaded the Maven dependencies in this particular new reference library called Maven dependencies. It has got this Selenium Java and its supporting libraries automatically downloaded and added to this Maven dependencies package. So this is the beauty of Maven. It can directly download such kind of reference sources without us needing to download all of these jar libraries individually, right? And what is the other thing which you need to know? You need to have a compiler and you need to have Surefire plugin. So let me show that part. I've already added those tags. So if you go to the extreme bottom here, I have added two tags here. One is a Surefire plugin and one is a compiler plugin for the Maven project. You need to have these two as a part of your plugins tag. So this is what will complete your Maven configuration for pom.xml. So you can run the project through pom.xml with run as, and if you see here, we are having a lot of options here. So to run the test, we have to use Maven test, and there are different steps in the life cycle of Maven project, and in detail, in depth, we are going to see in our next session when we create a tutorial on Maven. So with pom.xml, what you can get is we can create plugins, we can have dependencies, such that with dependencies we can get the jars automatically downloaded to our project without needing to explicitly set the build path, etc. And it will take care of helping us to get those Selenium libraries for executing our project. So that is the importance of Maven. What is page object model, page factory? Explain its advantages and disadvantages. See, a page object model is a design pattern. Even page factory is also a design pattern. It just is having some subtle difference between the two. So we look at that. What are the advantages? So as an example, let me just show you the project framework which we had created last time. Let me minimize this project. So we had created this particular framework, and I had told you all that when you basically use a Maven project, a page object model design pattern, you would be having the entire application divided into different pages here, like home page, sign up page, sign in page, etc., right? So what would happen is that, let's say you have any specific element locator on the sign up page, right? If you're using a page object model, I'm using the word page object model. What it means is that we are dividing the entire application into different pages, and each page, different pages. Let's understand what does it mean. And each page would have, individual locators and basic methods to interact with the element, with that element locator. So this is what your page object model is going to have, right? So how do you achieve that? You achieve that by using by value, right? Just use the by class, just give it the name. So what name we are going to give? Let's say we are having the value for user ID. So by user ID equal to, right? Right. So what happens here is that you're going to have a separate different locators as a part of the sign up page, right? This is the sign up page. I'm creating a different locators here. So here I've created a locator for user ID field, right? I'll have one more field, let's say for password. So I have to create like this kind of thing. I'm going to create a password, and I'm going to say by.id, let's say. So you can use a different ways is that you just have to use this by dot. You can see you can use class name, CSS selector, ID, link text name, partial link text, tag name, XPath, the usual ways how we find the element, right? You can use any of that. So let's say we have ID. Let's say it's pass, right? So once these two elements are a part of your sign up page, then you would be having the different methods to interact with that, and you will also have a constructor here. So we might be getting some argument passed from our other module of a program, and we want to get it connected, right? So we just have to say we are going to initialize this particular driver of this class using this particular method. This dot driver equal to driver what we have got it from our parameter, and we'll be having methods to do some actions on the UI. So it could be like provide login info, something like. and we are going to get the user ID and password, of course. So we will be having that string user ID, comma string password. Password might be encrypted, right? And we're going to use this dot user ID equal to user ID. So we are going to have different methods which are there, which is going to work on the values provided. So you can separate it out also as different methods as well. It's up to you. But the thing is that as you make it more elementary, it's better. And you can have one particular method which does end to end. I'll show you how it is to be done. So let's say we have set this dot user ID equal to user ID. So what's the error here? Change the type of user ID to string, right? Right. So what here error we had got here is that we have to use this user ID for this particular field. Now we are yet to form the element. So the element will be formed by driver dot find element. Here we generally write by dot xpath etc. Right. Now we are going to use user ID directly. That is the difference between a normal formation of XPath with respect to a page object model. With page object model, you'll be having this by class used with the different elements created. You just have to use them, right? How I found it here, driver.find element, user ID. Here, user ID, we have to give some other value. So you can say user ID val. Then it will not have any conflict. And you can now use dot operator. And now you're going to send the keys. And you're going to use user ID val. So this is how you're going to use the value provided by the user to enter the user ID information. Similarly, you will be interacting with the password field. So you're going to say this as provide user ID info, and we can give this name as provide password info. We're going to say this as password and give this password value. Let's say give this password value here and use this passwd as a find element here, right? So these are the two methods which are there to interact with the elements. So this could be like so many number of elements on a page which you can have. So you'll be having methods to interact with that. You'll have a constructor as well. So what are the advantages of a page object model which we have seen now? Like this, we'll have so many pages, right? And you will be having separate test packages. So we'll be having separate package for test methods, right? You'll be having separate classes which are having the test cases. So those are going to be a separate class. And you're going to have your test ng concept used there, where you will be having the @test annotation, right? So you'll be having that before method, before test, etc., whatever we have used in a test engine. Those, of course, you're going to have. So from your test, you're going to invoke these sign-in page or sign-up page in a proper flow, in an end-to-end fashion, such that it is able to completely execute our test case. So what are the advantages of page object model now? With page object model, we are separating out the locators from our test cases. So your locators and your test cases are completely separate. They are not merged as a part of each other, right? So what is the advantages of this approach? With this particular approach, if there is any change in the locators for the application, if something got changed, right, ID or something got changed, you just have to come to one Java file and just make changes to that with no changes to your test cases or any other part of module, right? You just have to come to your respective page. Also, it is giving us individual elementary methods to interact with the element. So you don't have to worry about that, and even your test data can be separate from your actual locators. Its locators is separate, your test data is separate, and your test scripts are separate. So it's all in a proper systematic fashion. You will be able to achieve all of that, and with this, you'll be also be doing code reusability with using the same methods what are a part of the same Java file. You will not be required to again and again define the same code. Whatever operations are there, you've defined within that class, and you're having the element with that particular method to be interacted. So it's all in a systematic fashion, it's organized. So it allows us to reuse the code. It is keeping the test data and the locators separate from your test cases file, right? So there are not much any disadvantages as such. Only thing what we could say is that from a framework perspective, we would want instead all the locators to be stored in one common file rather than storing in separate Java file. We would want them to be stored in one common file like a properties file or like a constant file or any other way or how we would want it to organize. Rather than separate, we would want it to keep in one central place as like a object repository properties file. That would be the only what you can say as a nice to have which we can think of. No any specific disadvantages such for the page object model. So hope you got this particular point clear. Page Factory is the inbuilt page object model within Selenium WebDriver. And with Page Factory, there is slight syntax difference what comes into picture. Similar sort of packaging structure and everything will go. But with respect to syntax, you are going to use, you're going to create the element actually. Rather than by, you're going to create the element. So in Page Factory, how the syntax goes is that you have to use this @find by annotation and then tell how are you going to use it. So if I say by dot, right? So if you see here, we are having different options present. So if I say by dot ID, you can give it the ID, right? So you can use different syntax here with respect to find by clause. So you're going to use this find by annotation and you're going to say whatever is a type, let's say it could be ID. You can just say ID equal to the value of the ID. That is it. And this particular thing is going to be your web element. So you have to give a name to it. And the element name, let's say give it as user ID 1 because already I've used user ID above. And you're going to just import this web element 1. Right? So this is going to identify this as a web element. Similarly, likewise ID, you can go for name attribute or you can go for class name attribute, right? You can go for XPath. So these are different ways you can identify the element, right? At the rate, let's say ID equal to ID1. So let's say this is not ID, this we're going to refer as pass1 because we are trying to find out the password. So let's say password1. That is it. So these are the different ways of writing, how to write an element for using the Page Factory. Now there is another difference with respect to the constructor. In constructor of sign up page, we had mentioned this dot driver equal to driver. This is going to be there as it is, and we are going to simply say one more thing: Page Factory dot init elements. So we are going to use init elements, and what is the element we are going to use here? WebDriver comma object. So we are going to say driver comma this. Now the reason we are saying this here, this means the object of this particular class, that is sign up page. With respect to sign up page, all the elements have to be initiated. That is the meaning of Page Factory dot init elements. Using this driver and this pointer, which is pointing on nothing but a representation of your sign up page object. Right? So that is how you're going to define this in a Page Factory. Right? So let's come back to our file. So we are still left with many things to continue. So let's continue that in the next session. So we have covered it till here. Hope you have got today's session. It was quite a lot of concepts to grasp. So we are going to continue the remaining concepts in the next session. So stay tuned for that and do watch my channel. Thank you so much.